right, welcome back. Inaugural National Budget Speech 2022 is what we are here previewing at Parliament this morning. It's great to have you with us. Of course, the budget will be announced later on this afternoon by our Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana. A lot on his plate today, and certainly something that we will be watching very, very closely for some clues as to the recovery of our economy, where we are going, and how South Africa is doing. Definitely a better picture than it was last year, but then again, last year we were really in the deep throes of the COVID-19 pandemic. We had been from 2020. Now, remember, prior to 2020, we were already on the brink of a recession as an economy. So now we're finding ourselves in a worse off position. But how are we clawing back? And that is the big question now. Matthew Sparks is with us here from Cosatu. We're going to talk to him and find out what they're looking for. Great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us here. So, state-owned entities, we didn't touch on it earlier in our interview, and I'd like to start off there because obviously we'd heard a lot of promises from, previously the Finance Minister, Tito Mboweni, very, very hard on that stance. Also the President saying, enough of bailing out SOEs. However, they're big job creators. You cannot just let state-owned enterprises fall apart. What is he going to do when it comes to bailouts with SOEs?
Sure. Look, first to the fundamental issues that we have an economy in deep recession, unemployment of 46%. So we need to address the blockages to the economy growing. We need to fix Eskom so you have reliable and affordable electricity. Eskom has been making some progress on reducing its debt levels. Let's give it additional assistance. But we also have to fix Transnet and Metro Rail, which are hanging on for dear life. They're being stripped apart by criminal syndicates. So we really hope to hear in the budget speech some urgent interventions to fix them, to save them. Because Transnet is key to jobs in the mining and manufacturing and agricultural sectors. Metro Rail is key to getting workers in the cities on time to work. So if you can get those three SOEs back on the feet, that gives some impetus to the economy to grow. There needs to be other plans for the other SOEs. We can't simply watch them die, like Denel, SABC is hanging on for dear life. The post office is in a serious crisis. So there needs to be a bit of a turnaround plan for them. We agree you can't have a bailout forever approach. But all of these SOEs were sustainable 10 years ago. So with a bit of turning around, competent management, clear repositioning, they can be brought back onto their feet.
I feel like we say that every single year, and every single year we're in a worse off position. Now, we had the President busy telling us at the State of the Nation address, government does not create jobs, it's the private sector that creates jobs. How did that sit with you?
Look, we disagree. We think government has a role. The private sector also has a role. It's government which passes laws to enable investments. Government is the largest procurer in the entire economy. Government runs electricity, water, roads, basic services, the ports, the rail infrastructure. Government is also a significant employer. But we agree, you can't have all 30 million people working for government, but government has to lead from the front. It has to enable the private sector to get involved, but also has to put incentives in place, put accountability in place, but it can't simply outsource its leadership role to the private sector. The private sector is there to make profits. Government is one which must guide it in which way to go. But it can't simply say, well, we'll outsource it to the private sector. Workers expect better. They voted for government. And we cannot sit still and have an unemployment rate of 46% or a youth unemployment rate of 75%. So government must get its act together.
Yeah, an unemployment rate, growth prospects that are not very high at all. I mean, sitting at maybe 2%, not even, and a big unemployment rate, and particularly in the youth. And that's a very, very big worry. Now, if we're not looking to government to create these jobs, obviously the private sector wants to come in. They try and create these jobs, but under very difficult and aging infrastructure. And again, we spoke about it earlier. Rail, not looking good. The roads, it's a very big problem and a big issue. Electricity, even worse off now. I mean, is our country an attractive investment opportunity for people?
Yeah, look, we have a lot of problems, and we're a noisy democracy. We have serious crises, but we have the potential. We've got the most diversified and industrialized economy in Africa. We are not dependent upon a single agricultural crop or a single export. We've got the potential, but it needs some hard work to rebuild the infrastructure, electricity, rail, the roads, water. We need to invest in the skills of young people to make them more attractive to employers. But the potential is there. It just requires political will from government, a bit of sense of urgency from government, and a bit of sense of commitment and contribution from the private sector. But it can be done. It has to be done.
Yeah, it has to be done. Is there political will?
Well,
or is there more of a selfish will right now? I'm putting you on the spot here because, many people are feeling that way right now. It's like, worry about us, the people of the country, because we are struggling, we are starving.
Look, if there's no political will, government will be out on its backside in 2 years' time. The local election results are very clear. Voters have faith in the ANC, but the patience is running out very, very quickly. The ANC for the first time went under 51% in November. So that result will repeat itself in 2 years' time if government doesn't deal with unemployment, with corruption, with fixing ESCOM, with fixing rail and SOEs, with reducing unemployment. If you don't do those things, then yes, voters will walk away.
Yeah. 350 Rand grant, this is a big thing. It's here to stay for now. I'm not sure whether it's ever going to go, because there are a lot of people that are dependent on that. Do we see some flexibility there? I mean, already costing about over 40 billion to South Africa's economy. Do you think this may increase a little bit?
We hope so. And we had engaged with the President quite a bit around extending the 350 grant. It is this foundation for a basic income grant. Is benefiting 10 million people. It's not a huge amount of money, but the queues in the post office show people value it. It helps them to buy a loaf of bread a day. Research has shown it's helped people to pay for transport to go and look for work. It's money which is not lost because it is pumped into the local economy, and it's affordable at 40 billion rand, but you can't cut it off. Those 10 million people won't find jobs tomorrow, so let's keep it. Let's narrow the gap with the food poverty line, and let's link it to the skills training program so those people can be better placed to find permanent jobs afterwards.
Yeah, Matthews, I'm worried as well about the cost of living, the basic cost of living. Now, obviously, we see a lot of taxes that get implemented today. Today is the day where we find out if we're going to be paying more or less. I have heard that the tax base may stay, stable, that there might not be too many increases. I'm not sure South Africans can actually afford it at this time. But I mean, when we look at levies, like for instance the fuel levy, there is something difficult. I mean, e-tolls, again, I'm hearing rumors and whisperings that they may be included into a further fuel levy, but we're already paying over 21 Rand, probably from Wednesday, for a litre of petrol next week. I'm not sure South Africans can afford this. Electricity prices, food prices, everything is increasing.
Look, we have to give people some cushions. So we don't think we can afford to increase taxes upon workers or the middle class. There is some space to increase taxes upon the wealthy through inheritance, estate duty, and so on. The biggest thing we can do on the tax front is to invest more in SARS. SARS has done very well in the past few years to rebuild itself after a decade of state capture. We've seen positive returns and increased revenues for the state. So that gives the state more revenue, more space to play with. So there's a lot of space for SARS to clamp down on customs evasion. There's huge amounts that could be collected in that way. But I think government has to review the fuel price regime. It's simply suffocating workers and the economy. We have to find a better tariff hike regime for ESCOM, which again is suffocating the economy and workers, and give some breathing space to lower and middle income workers to be protected from inflation as well.
Indeed, absolutely. Finally, last one point that you're looking for out of the budget. What are you waiting to hear?
Sure. I think we'd want to hear from the Minister of Finance that government will respect collective bargaining, will engage public servants on the wages and conditions of service, and also that government will deal decisively with corruption and wasteful expenditure, which really is bleeding the state billions of rands every year.
Matthews, thank you. Always a pleasure speaking to you. Matthews Parks of Cosatu, talking to us about expectations ahead of the budget that will be announced this afternoon.